Sorry, Austin has to use the bathroom. Do you mind waiting just a second? Cool, thank you. We're good.
All right, it should be sent. Cool. Let me know when everyone has it. Let's get a thumbs up. Don't mind. All right, everyone good? Awesome. Advantage 1 is court clock. Civil and criminal courts are clocked now. Slow in 20. The number of cases in a courtroom 50 to 8,000. The court changes to 30%. The increase civil cases and number of criminal cases by 100 substantial margin. Criminal violence constitutes 40% of total cases. Efficiency. Median time on a case skyrocketed 200% to over 7 months. The plan unclogs both courts. Slow in 20. A criminal court will be expedient. Judges will be familiar with the rules and doctrines. Justice will not be easily relearned because of intervening civil matters for each case. In fact, efficiency cases because the criminal docket is primary. Reaching with licensed civil cases with criminal cases to remove backlog with debate by the speedy trial act. Criminal cases must take precedence over civil cases on the court's docket would promote consistency. National court or resolve conflicts in lower courts between as many cases as currently. The judge to preside over only criminal adjudication, be more to the handling rulings, minimize court opinions, maximize precedent. National court would enhance judicial capacity to hear criminal appeals, habeas claims, and president arrest cases, certiorari papers. And the national court could have denied be used to petition the Supreme Court. The court would lighten the Supreme Court's burden, which could devote more attention to significant cases. That's key to patent protections and innovation. Ball 10. The courts are crucial part of patent system protect patent rights to pursue management of the court has an impact on patent behavior and investment in R&D. Patent rules are a factor bringing innovation with inefficient court firms hesitate new products which infringe on patents. So any additional delay or cost in clarifying rights is slow. Innovation building legitimacy solves the ongoing chilling effect of O'Connor. 14 party members of the courts is critically dependent on the parties believing that the courts can't provide them with the protections they seek. If parties not trust the courts, they will be more inclined to adopt for arbitration. Uniquely true for biomedical innovation. Patent protections are key to reach consumers and generate revenue. Anything less risk innovation is dying at the point of research. US 17 biomed research chances innovation will lead to protection due to the cost of development and implementation. IP opens avenues that can facilitate new product create a viable and sustainable business model. Investors demand ROI. IP allows companies to block competitors and retain exclusive market share. Companies not invest in products not protected by IP. Biomed innovation key diplomacy solves global conflict. Magori and Altumani for that 14 scientific and healthy resources create dominant self-power by generating behavior foundation developers and build enduring partnerships to promote regional global security. Healthcare sectors to leverage prize research and development for pharmaceuticals. Biotechnology can play a pivotal role in the U.S. response to unpredictable challenges. Strategies can use diplomacy of medicine to reach out. Cooperation represents the unique opportunity to set relationships on more amicable and sustainable course. Solves ABR, large genetically engineered solution to remove resistant genes. Johnson 15 engineers find antibiotic resistant products are limiting industrial engineering for a new generation. Collaboration make microorganisms that fight disease and remove greenhouse gases. Hope to make biological manufacturing reliable. Synthetic biology and tackle antibiotic resistant superbugs. What if bioengineers found a way to remove the antibiotic resistant genes? Researchers are working to design new types of probiotics. The time for synthetic biology has arrived. Extinction. Geltman 15 overstation. Telematics has created a public health medicine of superbugs. Immune security. This patient will be the first aspect of time before we had drugs. If we're going to defuse the bug bomb, we need to eliminate use of current drugs. The CDC considers the primary source to come from overuse of antibiotics. The major outbreak of an antibiotic-resistant infection is a potential climate event. The public health and national security cannot ignore a threat to nation security. Does key to environmental litigation. TRAC 14 civil criminal filings are a rise in time for required for handling cases increased by 63% to 26 months. Higher workloads and processing times had consequences because the courts serve as the referee resolving conflicts. Litigation essential when enforcing environmental laws against polluters. Backlogs, greenlight environmental destruction, but specializing courts can solve that. This pre-9 appellate courts over a debilitating backlog to the program plans to be years before a hearing. It would like to be detrimental while a project to move ahead. If length, environmental damage, absent hearing, moving environmental cases from the general docket to allow them to be fast-tracked. Delays completely collapse environmental law compliance. Looking for the judiciary exhibits ineptitude to for the government is undermining the environmental law compliance will suffer completely collapse. Judiciary and mechanisms for accountability and oversight will of course may impose sanctions. The offending agencies, judges, accept its home for investigative and prosecutorial discretion. The environmental law courts provide recourse when there is assistance investigation. In the absence of a judicial backstop, violators will continue to violate if delays, unpredictability, or incompetence of judicial backstop is nullified in situations such as refusal access or position in transitions which judicial action may be essential to overall compliance with environmental law. Extinction. Roads 18. Environmental crimes holding the environment and keep gang stealing security groups to drive government's revenue while threatening security, criminal networks, food conflicts, devastating ecosystems, and threatening extinction. If the ecosystem class of human systems become extinct, the system class civilization, from the environmental crime enforced law, if jurisdiction is not enforced, they cannot be effectively illicit use of natural resources, drive conflicts, trafficking, undermines governance, illegal harvesting, value of 14 billion per year, impacts undermine peace, civilization is threatened, more enforcement, ensure life. Thus, the plan, the United States federal government should establish new federal criminal sentencing structures. Advantage 2 is court power. The court system fails to resolve certain conflicts now, which destroys governmental trust and legitimacy, as well as uniform legal doctrine. But the federal criminal court saw slow-broken to equality of jurisprudence has declined due to increase in cases and strings of the court doctrine. Uniform legal doctrine is sovereign, and certain conflicts become less likely to be resolved. Half of the circular reputations are denied review. The convention perceived by severity work mission decision regarding the liberty and governmental power. The details included with judges made apart from guidelines sentencing enhancement. And when the warrant is named, the court fails to reconcile combination trade diversion outcomes, ensure and multiply the Christmas less likely to form uniform law, reverse the race trend, upward and increase unprecedented opinions, and reduce judicial accountability. Smaller proportion going to oral arguments, reduce protection legitimacy among the bar and the public. 85% of the decisions are unpublished, 75% were unaided by oral hearing. The situation warrants a federal court system devoted to criminal cases. Collapsing governmental trust cements truth decay that causes failed foreign policy actions and conflict escalation. Capital IT and truth decay creates violation of elected officials, low trust in government, contributes to weakening authority of constitution, polarization to drive to decay, increase obstacles between partisan camps, preventing the compromise. Low trust have real consequences. The U.S. is to interact constructively with partners and allies. The extent of truth decay interferes composes the threats to the functioning of democracy. The inability to reach great station and the issue to create foreign policy race when the threats arise. The U.S. must make immediate decisions to protect security and can have significant consequences in intentional escalation. Creating itself from truth decay costs are substantial in foreign policy, whereas truth decay undermines effective responses to every single existential risk. That's Rich 20. Truth decay is an enfeebled response to climate change, terrorism, pandemic, facts based threat of nuclear war. It means responding to threats that there's growing evidence that people don't like trust in institutions. That foreseeing the future means restoring fast the economy. Higher truth decay is the existential threat of our time. The new court transfers judges from lower courts. Those vacancies need to be filled. Slow booking. Ultimately, the court separating the division, the criminal division responsible for criminal cases involving federal issues. Judges would come from district and circuit courts. Packing lower court friends conservative backlash, which chills liberal policies. Don't again. 19. No progressive agenda can be enacted and maintained without overhaul of the judiciary. Must be a pact. The courts goes to Medicare and Green New Deal. Garner support. None will be about packing with the courts back with Republican judges. There will be delayed and struck down. Look at the ACA type of courts into a decade. Hollowing out without court packing and progressive agenda will mean the end. Judges start serving the agenda of the Republican Party. Conservative backlash reigns in the administrative state and Biden's agenda. Schlesinger 21. Biden's moving on agenda by building exos. We're about to run to a judiciary turn skeptical regulatory authority. And conservatives determined to tap into that skepticism to start overshooting and carbon emissions. Trump judges dedicated to reigning in the administrative state. Biden will face legal headwinds, so they expect to pick up where Obama left off. Because of gridlock, the presidents have trust regularly. Right, Congress has failed to enact climate legislation. Biden plans to lead heavily in exos and regs. And exos run a big court. The Biden legislation eliminating emissions will require liberal interpretation of the law. Conservative judges need to curb regulators. The administrative state so success security threats as Whitson Bloom 15. More of threats is complex. The lifetime must influence behavior, investigating and punishing bad actors. The direct tool governments have is regulation. Remain the most powerful ways to influence large numbers. Regulations affect cyber attacks, long terms of criminal prohibition. Biological law imposes criminal liability. Law controls exports attack with military dual use nature. Civil criminal rights establish norms stronger than the power to enforce rights grade based on investigation, enforcing, destroying abusive tech and capacity. Those who misuse and laying bad actors. No authorities are watching. Regulation will serve as a lever for smoking abuses as technical more powerful and available. Emerging tech are inevitable risk extinction and outweigh natural threats. Backstab 14. Emerging tech risk survival. The geoengineering can give its country's abilities under altered global climate. The risk actually through explaining effects on the climate or the ecosystem. AI give decisive advantage areas or high impact. We need regulatory vocabulary. Species are not destroyed often though. In century 1 in 5,000. Natural risks are small probabilities. Opposite for anthropogenic risk. Tech driven. Nuclear accident sign. Pose greater risk. Bioengineering overcome natural variants. Transmissibility. Overcome pandemics. Unprecedented consequences loom larger than nukes. Oppose single terrorists with deployed pathogens and argues for a mature and adaptive regulatory structure. Makes risk of researchers thought that from AI probabilities far from negligible. It's possible to rule out a genuine risk. Technologies are difficult to control much harder than nukes. Ball. Actors cause global problems. Development may be rapid. We cannot manage extremes through trial and error. That's more for government to develop responses. I'm reading a couple more cards. I'll send out after. Congress is key to both advantages. Nash 21 Constitution vests discretion to create courts and legislative. Article 3 and Article 1 afford Congress power delegations to eliminate discretion to create a new court. See Mark Gazzi. Judicial last authority. See Cohen's declining exemption. The accumulation of all powers in the same hands may be tyranny. To see Canada court and extends authority to because Congress not assigned such conflicts with Congress. All right, I'm gonna send that and I'm good for cross.
Cool. As soon as you sent it out, just tell me so.
It's sent.
Cool. Let's start on the first advantage, the scenario. Environmental litigation speed is necessarily key. So the AF greatly increases the speed at which environmental litigation moves to the courts. Yes.
Yes, it resolves backlogs and makes
Cool.
environmental.
If you
compliance
are
better.
right that the conservatives, that the court is largely conservative now, and why does the speeding up of those regulations not mean that conservatives in the courts, especially in the Supreme Court, are incredibly quick at dismantling environmental regulations?
They're different. They're different things. Environmental litigation, the cognitive advantage one, is not about like government regs, Biden's agenda. It's about environmental crime.
Wait, I'm sorry. No, but I'm sorry. Your evidence says that environmental litigation broadly. Where's the distinction between these two?
Our impact card's about environmental crime. The Mulkey card is about compliance with environmental criminal law.
So if the courts say that this is also true because you explicitly say that you move conservatives to this criminal court, right?
No. Well, the plan creates.
I'm sorry. Then how do you solve the second? No, because you move conservatives who are on the court to this new criminal court.
If I can explain,
court is the problem here. Okay.
Sorry, it doesn't move all the conservatives over to one court. Rather, it creates two courts. It funnels existing judges, some onto that court, which means both courts are like half filled, and Biden gets to appoint the rest of the people.
Okay, actually, let's move on to this sort of half-filled argument. I'm confused as to, does the affirmative exactly randomly distribute these judges? Like the affirmative solvency for advantage 2 is premised on you make the existing courts more liberal. Which court is this? Is it the criminal court or the new court?
Both. The Slobodan evidence says judges in the new system would come from the current district courts and circuit courts of appeals.
It also says they would come from sort of existing state attorneys, but that's obviously a separate question, which we'll win some internal link mitigation on, because that's the next line of your card.
Sure.
I'm asking
I disagree.
You can disagree with the next line in your card all you want.
There's Democrat state attorneys.
Cool.
And Biden gets to choose them, actually.
Okay, so Biden gets to choose all of these appointees and they uphold the regulatory state. Is that correct?
Yes.
What's the breadth of Biden's environment regulations that these courts sort of uphold? I'm seeing healthcare regulations. I'm seeing economic regulations.
Our impact is about the power of the administrative state largely. The Witts and Bloom evidence says that
broadly administrative states have more power to enact regulations.
Conservative courts are really into the idea of striking down administrative regulations. Our argument is those will be struck. Regulations on technology, et cetera, will be struck down. That's a bad thing.
The truth decay internal link. Why does the AF make the courts seem more full of truth to conservatives who just saw their Supreme Court majorities dismantled?
Well, conservatives have a majority now. The argument is
they see their majority dismantled, and they said,
okay. We don't change the Supreme Court. That's a clarification.
Right, but they're broader in terms.
Yeah, our arguments about court efficiency and trustworthiness and legitimacy.
Okay, those seem to be divorced from the current political
you're not letting me
you're
not letting me explain anything, so it's kind of hard to.
Okay, I'm saving now. Okay, should be sent. Let me know when everyone gets it. I think it's 6, advantage 1, advantage 2. Does everyone have it? Sweet. Infrastructure to set Biden's when to consider tax rates when new reconciliation without GOP votes. PC is key for import 3 when votes reconciliation with all them there. Well, when votes even measure the House and White House is trying to show when it's return party lines and president ready when negotiating house rates when it comes to and CGR Rex PC cost of left time only 20 by when trace and removes slide time piece are limited and when need to around say black fall national rate trying to change this harder for the federal level and also have the options for also left for dead infrastructure bills key to revitalize cybersecurity rally 21 infrastructure bills security for sure increase cybersecurity as a service and also great everything so that action power to the healthcare system limit master failure, and so when Chinese campaign against Pakistan government needs to do more about components rain and and grossly and self-extinction is a threat buffer, and the amendment is understated. Green 19, the nation complex systems and societal sensitive calamities and carbon infrastructure events. Other most great social fabric by CMEs and hip cyber. Cyber threats are American threat and filibuster counterpoint. The United States House of Representatives and 50 Democratic senators also established new federal criminal sentencing structures. The Senate branch, including President Biden and Vice President Harris, also probably support the initiative. Republican senators should block the initiative via filibuster. And the Senate parliamentarians should rule the filibuster prevents the use of reconciliation of this initiative. And the plans bipartisan deal making states the filibuster. The counterpoints of Republican opposition obstructionism. New State Cap 424. And that's what the majority rule of both parties of the group. The Caddo from the over 36 a lot of fails. The Congress will next filibuster two parties. And this has some what it is. The Senate commission on this bill having high stakes of the chamber. Our false making over the next 4 years, and then harming is a filibuster. Nothing happens. It's all obstruction. If we can make it work, we can less pass it. If it's a motion and next tax filibuster diminished. Of the carbon left, the militia, the city vote rule, and key to immigration reform, indivisible 20 million, we need a commission control Congress. On the pass limit, pass the market, immigration reform, however, Republicans will block every priority bill, use the filibuster, and other progressive issues, so law must we do something about the filibuster. Let's change the rules, and immigration reform is key to innovation. Fish 12, immigration policy, failed to harm the reform, this is no impact compared to the immigration policy innovation, committed to the USA. Most of the cutting edge tech innovation companies must be international innovate, and tech innovation solves extinction, but it's fragile. Schultz 16 of Mumbai, and the IT Central Rest of the where we stand with us, humans, and the system. Kill Rush, what's the ecosystem, and the state power in our situation is IT without it. Futures of IT, we cannot solve environmental conflicts yet. IT is a level of failures, and this IT must be handled with care, fisher, which is on attack, and extinction first, and it's unattended, medical side effects, second training, things, and for the IT are only means of determining where side is up. And damage trust from his level extinction on the environment and writer said Fiat makes the plan a must-pass measure. When they instruction inclusion martial resolution appears are part about the fact that buildings that are must-pass resolution because Congress must-pass resolution attached to that all commercial otherwise minimum necessary passage, and that makes minimum wage get attached as a writer to the plan. Schultz 21 and progress is a push over minimum wage. We need to pass a wage and it's part of the must-pass resolution the version which we're down this and a collapsed economic recovery strain 25 minimum wage work. Yes, I can cover the CBO for forecast session. What's the economy will be our nation need more business income more and faster growth. If you don't remove the economy, you know, national household funds and extinction bear 20 from Western United, them powerful. U.S. without religion, skin, national standing, American needs, ever studies, through short, Australia's increased influence, and military, yet is not enough for some prosperity, must be shared by political table, hardly for value, the battle study, hostage leadership, strong recovery, supportability, self-leadership, geopolitical hostage, strength, and double center, low crises, hostage climate. Pandemic refugees, U.S. has unique tools and 25th Amendment counterpoint. The United States federal government should declare preserving existing federal criminal sentencing structures indicates an inability to charge with power and use of the presidential office. The 46th president of the United States should maintain existing federal criminal sentencing structures. The United States Congress ought to statutorily codify the 47th president's new federal criminal sentencing structures policy, and the counterpoint use the 25th Amendment to House Biden. Harris will follow the plan. Jerry Jacobson 21, 25th Amendment authorized Vice President, the cabinet declare president, and was charged the president, the House, and use of the office of Vice President will come back and President Congress would have to do the independent right at the caucus president, the other did it was as possible, and maybe it could be short. And GDP re-entry is coming down. Its competitiveness. Houseman 21 how much rates at all level trade policy the trade deficit was possible for loss of 3 million jobs. The growing creeping encouragement, the TPS and China separate, and the TPS after failure rules. All the continue to our sites and for goods and our small number of people in the U.S. and coming out of will be a general rifle almost not process the American worker. We obviously see that Harris stops at less than 20 Harris administration is saying we need for American products and not American jobs. Now plus trade deal that's down with us interest to be done passing to us. I would work through Western government China special military access and not Patrick Trump's chair for extinction hot 17 the burn and maintaining order will fall in the U.S. Underground countries as last year mindset around ISIS, China, Russia, climate, alternating terror to see domestic national security for policy because the home of the world cannot work out in the U.S. All the not active does not have foundation the better the U.S. economically the more available resources develop that advice to be the accessible growth and ESR counterpoint. The United States federal judiciary should direct challenges to administrative authority and executive branch of the United States that should provide increased funding and adopt an adaptive technology-driven approach to deal with core backlogs and solves the battle wider. 19 analysts abilities and selling headers violation determining they meet criteria of backlog as well as the ability to government uses access for reasons focus on actions emphasis on administering and how the house processing the workers to enable backlog Russian plan near accuracy, team creative quality, and consistent assurance process while pursuing rare to detail with looks steps and fixing about means adding steps that automatically can assist right real time decision frames and applicants if determination within 24 hours. Of course, time more than 4,000 cases pending that something second sales in the process upon incorporating presence and any set of procedures to court cases, court environment issues automated and case management. And the first plank solves the administrative regime and good impacts on advantage 2 with 3D printing this patent litigation fails. Open access 3D printing innovation. Number 15 current technical capabilities will be in the house of regulation will occur in the case of medical muscle by result fast with poor equipment of law, pace drawbacks. No one see a ban on the predators, regulation, predators, radical passing, and force the ban when I'm able to enforce with all sending nothing more than drive deck. Often created by enterprise and 3D printing solves naval power, but only if the US are not integrated before hours. 16 passes, build the passes. Manufacturer 3D printing will have a loss impact in the enable. And if the battle pass also rather people to dominate fast with both fast with my increase middle generation. Features will see how that has ever matched native ready to happen with him. Maybe bringing in places of wars in the more officially nuclear war crops 18 process and most use means there's something crisis running in them and how I say the hammer borders fighter more turning in there and they don't have to develop some nuclear change or secret power from the final have no side of it. Power market on nuclear war than sea power advantage 1 no impact to war machine 15 over his witnessing war periods which members 16 current scientific literature included research increase may have short design period to be a president FPC warrants a company to have this year consequences how relations have been how we focus on the government and has to do the economic development and cultural change in human capital even if every nation meets ambitious emission targets and will affect humans for having capital research station with an a court application environmental law box any public legitimacy or resources for enforcement means somebody models corporations will defer payments to people or change behavior by 12 and then they do kind of atmosphere public trust without college recognition maybe that kind of product of the judge's law signing resource and taking the lesson couple of days to this order judge's law utility render a lot of times finding such measures require legislation which of course like and can see they cause environmental suits yes encroachment on private property rights cops investor entrepreneurial certainty have been 15 and have rights as also level of private rights and what it does to know about the public good has a possible city hearing multiple different things the public good absence about property rights and preference rules of it governments and governments to provide environmental protection of property owners and then the counties land and ways they right out that is they become severe when uncertain lose their finances as well as security for us and internet houses and public transport liberty and property rights will become so contingent as all uses as assurances for those who provide both necessary for the public there's no interest to system of property rights and it turns case help 15 on the democracy as a being the rule of law the way parts of the rule frame out of time has this right thing to do but because the law required it until this conference of the course as an arbor is saving a fallen planet requiring innovating and creativity loss and such innovation if the rule of law maybe nation solving farm innovation fails long continue farm productivity and for decades of falling told I am not meaning how they said the investment for management so I have differences in it there's a low public sales such as I know combination all these drugs have been made public trust is let higher hurdles quality better than money and tendency those research horse bias and unknown path to ABR James says he never recognition the problem increased possibility of building solutions and I say they were special that had no risk of serious infection until also that was something about the about a new approach based on accident critical species absolutely no spectrum important bacteria multiplied bacteria advantage true the case nonsense pinker 19 or we put your then never heard of cliche politics and always item that lead us American war first war of not rocket fake news is not new has pandemics can find no fake news of a massive portion of vacations of 1,000% which nearly a presence of every system persuasion always surprising unless you're already in writing the fevers email supposed to usually that's what it is and even if writers are good here they're not proud it's only overly complicated code we're directed towards big corporations that are solid solving security threats full about 9/11 and maybe believe they were about writers helpful guy there since he is and sure was a similar to different kind of environment once and always with the hurls images those with the last flowers at the house of it everyone else like costing on the issue in the massive everyone's on the south there's the card above it and you can be hundreds of hundred proteins and several have already been designed but yeah he said BD and they make it novel antibiotics significantly de-risks development of antibiotics. Okay, so change the marking of the James evidence to antibiotics. I can send a marked version if you want.
All right. Yeah, that'd be good. Until before we start.
Okay. Skipped one card.
And those texts where you said should maintain existing plans area policy.
Yeah, no, I didn't say plans area. I said.
Did you add? So you ad-libbed it? Can you send the text?
Yeah. Sorry. Let me pull it. Yeah. I just said declare, preserve, maintain existing federal criminal sentencing structures.
All right, can you send the text? So
yeah, I can do that right now also, like with the marked version.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Okay. Okay, it should be sent. I'm good whenever.
Let me pull it up.
Got it.
All right, cool. You good?
Yeah.
Second, the filibuster counter plan, I guess, how on earth does this compete?
Well, I think that's actually an Eleanor question, much more than it is a me question.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so if you'll notice, it doesn't actually mandate that the affirmative is passed, it mandates the affirmative is voted on by a non-majority in the House and the Senate, which means the plan would necessarily fail. The Republicans filibuster the plan under the counter plan, which means that it does not pass. Then we fiat that the Democratic Party removes the filibuster. We think the logical following of that would be that they pass the policy. They just literally tried to remove the filibuster over, but it isn't fiat.
So you don't
So at the end. Yeah.
You said the word establish.
Yeah.
How do you
fiat the end of filibuster? Yes.
We think the result of the counter plan is the end of the filibuster. We do not fiat the end of the filibuster.
Okay, Senate parliamentarians should rule the filibuster prevents the use of reconciliation for this initiative. So, what evidence do you think you have that Manchin will agree to get rid of the filibuster?
That's also an Eleanor question.
So obviously our 1 and C evidence, I don't think says Joe Manchin by name. If you press us on this, we'll read more cards and then 2 and C, yada, yada. As separate from that, we think the 1 and C evidence indicates that your 1AC has actually indicated this is a prerequisite to sort of enacting any of Joe Biden's legislative agenda. We think that's a strong case in favor of the magnitude of the affirmative sort of outweighing. Second of all, we'll make the argument that the 1 and C evidence indicates that the magnitude of sort of Joe Biden and every member of the Democratic caucus coming out in front of the plan. Additionally, Joe Manchin has already voted for the plan as part of the 50 Democratic senators, which means he's very likely to have his name attached to it, and everyone involved has their name attached to it and has staked their reputation on whether the passage happens or not.
Okay, that's fine. The 25th Amendment counterplan, Harris follows with it. Why does Harris follow with the plan, I guess?
Well, we think the plan is a popular measure that Harris would support.
But you just ruled that doing the plan.
Well, it's popular with Harris. It's popular with Harris.
Okay. Harris stops TPP reentry. Okay. The patents disad. This Homer card. Where does it say the word patent anywhere?
It's about a regulation and enforcement against 3D printing. We can read more cards in the block about patents, specifically enforcement against 3D printing. But I think Homer makes his claim that says that that patent enforcement is not coming now, but the plan creates it, which creates.
Wait, but it doesn't say patent. It just says it doesn't say the word patent.
Ban would not be capable of enforcement.
Why do we ban? Why is patent equal to a ban on 3D printing?
It would be a functional ban. We can read cards about patent enforcement. Ban. Yes, because patent enforcement would deck overall innovation. Right. It's a Napster moment where it cuts off future innovation.
10 minutes starting.
Just making sure. Did you read like A-spec or anything? Okay.
$640.
Right, I'm sending it now. It's sent. The order is the court clog advantage, the court power advantage, the ESR counterplan that also is the judiciary, the filibuster counterplan, the 25th Amendment counterplan, the patents disadd, the rider disadd, and then the infrastructure disadd. Would anyone like that order again?
Yeah, can you repeat that?
Yeah. Court clog, court power. Mishram, can you mute yourself?
Oh, sorry.
Court clog, court power, ESR, filibuster, 25th Amendment, patents disadd, the rider disadd, infrastructure. You good, Austin? Cool. Whoopsies, they can see the soft power impact that causes a nuclear war. No take back to the TOC. Yes, warming isn't our scenario, so all can see this, but they can see the bounty impact. This is a bounty collapse causes food and water declines, which means people can't survive, and it also causes war and terrorism. External impacts say it's not perceived as legitimate. The entire second advantage solves the impact of this argument. This argument is just about speeding up litigation, which is in our scenario. We do not cause more the cases to be processed. We just resolve the current backlog. It's not an influx in cases, but just resolve the current ones. They don't have any uniqueness for a scenario, so it's irrelevant. The patent scenario solves the entrepreneurship, which will impact out more on the counterpoint. They say it's turnkey. This is nonsense. We solve it better. They say pharma fails. It does work. Our evidence talks about it. How patents allow them to create more vaccines and more things that solve the pharmaceutical problems, and it also creates the diplomacy, which they concede. They say no MBR. Yes, it is. Our evidence is that worse than MBR is going to come. That will overcome current barriers. Core power advantage. The truth, the card that they raise about post-truth, not truth decay, so it doesn't apply. Our internal link is about the big people being able to private lawsuit the government, hold them accountable as a legitimacy. If they cannot do that, if it takes years to process case, then the government does not look legitimate. The court does not look like a credible institution. It's not about fake news, which is what they think it is. They've also conceded the terminal impact of truth decay, which is a failed foreign policy that causes war. It turns all their dissets. It also causes the launch of impacts in our vision. It says disease, pandemics, the warming, and the terrorism, the reg stuff. The companies are not the people that control dual-use military stuff, which is what our evidence is about. They've conceded bioterror, geoengineering, and AI, which are all impacts. They just can't win this debate when they concede so many impacts. ESR. Permutation do both. It shields links and net benefit. The other branches make the plan look less popular. Perm do the counterpoint. It's not competitive. You plan to use FG. They specify what that means. It links and net benefit because it would still be super controversial. But Biden have to take a credit object fee as a voter. They literally fiat the end goal of our advantage, which is bad. It makes it possible to leverage office kills fairness. Tech can't solve you need a separate court to do so, which is what our internal links are about. It can't solve legitimacy because it doesn't create a separate court and redistribute judges. Congress is key. The one see national evidence is an answer. It says empirics and the Constitution say it can't do so. The filibuster counterpoint. Perm do the counterpoint. The first plank does the app. Perm do the app and the counterpoint on structures. Generally, it's textually non-intrinsic. Counterpoints compete off a function and text. Perms can only delete words in the counterpoint. Text enforces net benefits remains to the plane of was infinite. Non-textually competitive counterpoints. Mansion certainly will never nuke the filibuster. Makes it dead on arrival. Solves neither app nor the net benefit. Manchin will not do it. Manchin and 21 filibuster is a critical tool for protecting the democratic governance. I will have said before, I will now say it again before, to remove the share of doubt. There's no circumstance in which I will vote to eliminate or weaken the filibuster. Perm, guarantee the plan, vote after the most beneficial combination of the plan. The counterplan's process includes enacting all of the plan's mandates as key to deliver a strategic cost to the counterplans that agree with the AF. Otherwise, debate, loss, or resolutionally focuses that grants the negative unfair advantage. It doesn't pass the plan, so it can't solve. Perm, do the plan. The second play includes Republican and transits counterplans that result in AF for voting issues. Steals the AF, makes the deficits impossible, and then destroys public education. Doesn't solve government trust. The lack of a conservative input makes the plan look politicized, escalating truth decay. Manchin won't agree to sufficient immigration reform, so they can't solve there's no internal link to the AF. Solves innovation via patents. I did that work on case condo is a voting issue. It use the AF and it doesn't make us do it prevents us from doing research in offense, which solves the 25th Amendment counterplan. It doesn't do the AF or zero solvency. Permutation guarantee the plan that was above perm. Do the AF and discharge the 46 president. The text is below perm. Do the plan declare an inability to discharge the power of the duties of the presidential office. We solve competitiveness better via patent innovation. As concede, soft power impact competitiveness is not key to hedge welfare. And 8. The U.S. once again confronted competitive crisis. We will not set forth the force such crisis since 1945. None of these crises shifted international system structure, multipolarity, and returns to the 60s, 70s, early 90s. Each scare of competitiveness to end of American primacy have retained and strengthened. We take a long view of the U.S. competitiveness relative power shift slowly. No other economy has a combination of wealth, size, technological capacity, and productivity for the foreseeable future. The patents to set. Thousands of studies prove that patents are key to innovation, which means the AF solves labor, and 14 patents provide incentive research and diffusive ideas. Claims which are bolstered by the thousands of empirical studies, which have no one refused to study 60 countries' IP was positively associated with investments. Overall, patents increased incentive directed incentive affects innovation and more so than other incentive mechanisms. 3D printing to naval power. Are you freaking kidding me? What are we doing? 3D printing naval ships. There are evidence about printers with banning printers, which is not what the AF does. It's not about patents. The U.S. will dominate even in 2030 at Moscow and 18. U.S. naval power will dominate by the 2030. The Navy will be halfway through their 30-year plan, which are threefold of Ford carriers. The numbers are higher than the current. All 3 cruises in the service of the next generation ship and enter production. U.S. naval supremacy isn't ending anytime soon. Naval power is irrelevant Fed-wise. In 18, the states will do roughly the same thing without the U.S. Oceans uncontrolled to appear just as stable. The U.S. overestimated degree which they control the sea. The rider dissent. There's no internal link. The Baird evidence that they read is about other bills, not minimum wage. They obviously can't solve the economy. Crossed by the defense from the other counterplans. The same competitiveness stuff. Rider decides are illegitimate and not possible. OP links are potentially infinite and rely on a flawed view of the normal means. Counterpurpose the plan passes as a standalone legislation. Must pass legislation is only appropriations and debt limit bills. The plan should pass Hamlet. And 12. The payroll tax code does not fit the definition of must pass, which refers to funding bills and debt limits. Other congressional analysis define the term appropriation to highest of must pass as payroll tax is not the same as appropriation debt limits. It fills the categories of politician, political should pass. Fiat means the plan passes immediately. Short time frame means no riders Lotto. And 19 short time frame committee members that were used under the hammer or the deal. All extraneous policies that had been set aside, unlike the one most passed bills are carried unrelated policies. Weed thumps Furtick and 21 Democrats taking the Senate changes the prospects of the cannabis legislation does not take a bear and designed to legalization. Legalization may be likely too progressive, part of a CGR package. Moderate Dems are not guaranteed. Republicans that can count on more fails that they do not send more is bigger than CGR legislation. Misham, give me more cards. Infrastructure. On the textual thing. Counterterp can't scramble words. We can only delete words in the 1 and C counterplans text order. Writing better counterplans solves all their offense. Infrastructure. 1, it won't pass Leonard. And 414 infrastructure's uphill journey. Dems that need to bring their caucus together. The blogger takes harder to pass. Presidents have a difficult time ushering in support for legislation in midterms. No, said whether the 2 bills are one to either. Risk supports the Dems rank so small number of can rank. Manchin wants a bipartisan, but the bill is unlikely to give Republicans support. Progressives thought the plan was too small. Proposed 10 trillion to Dem in funding thumbs reconciliation. Also, and 14 all Dems are on board. Manchin and several other Senate Dems opposed a tax on corporation. Progressives are concerned. Part 2 will not pass. 3, the plan is bipartisan. Mitchell and 4, 7 lower courts expansion bipartisan was not. The issue doesn't break along the partisan lines. Idaho introduced a new core 4 turn core packing. Conservative justice will strike down Biden's agenda, but the AF creates vacancies which are filled with liberal justice that flood the dock with progressive wins that prevents the courts from striking down all infrastructure. 5, turn reconciliation to plan rides the bill at Moynihan. 21. Court expansion satisfies all scenarios. The measures are satisfies some factors have met the Bird rules to expand judiciary through reconciliation should be attached to an expenditure, including budget and salary. Even the parliamentarian ignores the policy should be enacted through reconciliation. 6, no link. The plan is announced after this. Goldberg and 21 plus poured water on a bill to expand. The court says she said she had no plan to bring the bill to the floor. She wants to wait to hear from the Biden's commission before making a push. Have a commission study such a thing. 7, new bills now thumped beside it. And 21 Dems will unveil a bill which expand the justice of the courts. Hopes are dead on route. 2 Dems and 50 Republicans already rejected. No link. The plan is popular and Thumper Soberg and 20 special crystallization in criminal courts of 65, established motivation is more prevention than retribution on both sides of the elders. Momentum against harshness demonstrated by first step, Afghan thumbs Kronig, and 416 Afghan appeal to the anti-war left body CGPC to alienating some decision Menendez to make the agenda harder to achieve. There's no grid impact. Larson and 1890 grid is not about to go down. The U.S. grid is resilient and segmented targeting networks could cause blackouts in just one area. There's not a scale, no internal link. Gilman and 21 infrastructure packages not specify funds or Texas, even if all funds might not be enough to weatherize the plants, but all but 60% of electricity come from investor-owned utilities that would come in useful for the Fed to say private companies grant. ESR and the administrative state solves the virus struggle in 21 by of the most comprehensive plan sign access aimed to compensate his urgent. His words are directed to agencies to review the 100 rules Trump his orders is enormous solicit rejoining appears to defining a way to decarbonize and limit the warming to 2 degrees. The commitments to Biden make is a crystallizing force. The question is how much to Biden use of exos in Congress. We should most send that card out.
Sounds good. Eleanor, do you want me to wait for you to cross X for you to get it?
I would rather, yeah.
Okay. Then when Eleanor gets it, you can start. Got it yet?
Yes.
Okay, sweet. You good?
Yeah.
Okay, the filibuster counterplan, what does it look like for the federal government to establish structures?
To establish
Yeah.
Any structure.
Like
What
it
is-
can
what-
it can
what's the
establish any sort of institution, like the federal government can establish like a new executive branch agency. It can establish like a commission, like Biden did about the Supreme Court. It can do any structure.
Okay. Sweet. Sounds good. The politics is that plan rides the bill. What evidence do you think says that infrastructure is must pass?
I think you've read uniqueness evidence. The Moyne card is
Yeah,
not saying that the
That
plan
it will. That it will.
You read
pass.
evidence that infrastructure passes through reconciliation. The Moyne card says that expanding lower courts, which is what the F would be.
Riders are only attached to must pass legislation. What evidence do you think says that infrastructure must pass?
If
Like,
you
it
win your
has to pass.
if you win uniqueness, infrastructure passes through reconciliation. We read a card from a Yale professor that says that court expansion could ride reconciliation bills. We think that
that's fine. The writer said, we thumbs. What evidence do you think says that weed is must pass legislation? Kind of similar vein of questioning.
the Fertig card.
Yeah, it just says that like cannabis legislation is coming. Like that's not a must pass legislation argument. Like that's kind of the burden. What evidence do you think would ever substantiate that?
I think this card says it'll pass.
Will pass and must pass are very different things. Like let's clear that up. What evidence do you think says this is must pass and not that it will pass?
I mean, if you want to get into semantics, the 1 AR can read more cards.
That's okay. This is an argument then. Also says don't expect Biden to sign legalization. This seems like weed, even if it passes, just won't be attached. And it won't go through. Why would weed not just get shut down by Biden?
I think it says it'll pass through Congress.
Well, yeah, but if it rides the bill and Biden decks it already, why does that thump? It seems like it'll still ride other bills in the future.
I think it'll pass through Congress. I don't know.
Well,
we'll read more evidence if you say this in the block. Like that's how it works.
Okay. That's
Doing
fine.
something.
I have. The filibuster counterplan. Actually, theory ? I think is more my question.
Condo process account was a result in the AF.
Sweet. Well, I mean, what's the bright line for resulting in the AF? Anything could result in anything.
If the negative says that the AF would result from the counterplan, like
well, we think there's a high likelihood that it does, but like, what's the bright line for likelihood?
If the counterplan sets up some legal process by which the plan's implementation is very, very likely, then
what's the bright line for very likely? Like,
if Eleonora says in the 2NC the counterplan results in the AF being implemented in its as the form, then you have agreed.
If it's like
okay, you know what I mean.
If it's the exact plan text and no modifications, then
okay. 10 minutes starting now.
You didn't read a card, like any econ impact D card, right? Like on the writer just said. Just
We
I
read-
read
we read-
competitiveness, defense, and
Okay,
cross
yeah,
blood.
making sure. Because like it was like an AT econ block, but I wasn't sure if it was there, but
No, I
makes
just
sense.
cross blood.
Prep stopped at 4:42. I will send it out. Should be sent. Let me know when people are ready for an order. It's a little long. Are we good for an order? Cool. Filibuster. Patents. The 25th Amendment counter plan. The executive/advantage counter plan. The environmental add-on, I had no idea where. I think this is on the advantage counter plan. Yeah, so that's just right under there.
It was on
and
ES.
then-
It was on ESR.
ESR advantage. Yeah, it's the same thing. I'll answer it there, and then case in the order of the 1AC. Two prep it in the chat. Can I get affirmative indication for everyone that they are ready to go? Cool. Airport issue the breaks the filibuster with the full weight Democratic Party behind the plan use the GOP-led filibuster prevented from passing the nuke the filibuster. That's where the brink is now we're forcing the filibuster hang on my 30 mansion may find 100% filibuster not introduce the rental support for nuke the filibuster page another grammar hold might be less likely to be the filibuster buried for getting constituents. That's also the case after the campaign dynamics have changed. One, the plan is a high priority. The House passes there's a huge push for it. 50 gets already voted for it. The second the filibuster is gone. This change dynamic means the following measure Congress would be likely to pass the plan, especially since the issue they just used break the filibuster. That's the check. They'll do the benefit down below. Perm to the counter plan and separate to the voting issue. Shred opposition and testing makes the moving target. No world of the counterclaim via the absolute critical conditions that make it more likely that in fact every counterclaim does that, which also ends with a theory price at the bottom. What 13 ever actually something kind of affect something about a greatly different whether there's a negative applicable even if the causes are untenable. Now, the intrinsic permutation leads to intrinsic counterclaim is not manly breaking the filibuster possible result of the counterclaim. Intrinsic course or voting issue as can apply to generate artificial advantage just like this as plus the link proves that this intrinsic measure will bring the filibuster and aim of great infrastructure establishing structures is definitionally infrastructure because it's generic with the counterclaim because you allow us to read distance to the intrinsic permutation. Kind of wrong for Republican support scale back and structure man said he was leveraged to change that. Those opinion pieces are more passion enforced by the Caddo caused by their was opinion piece because in the context of infrastructure, but it's not in the context of the counterclaim. We have more like the scenario mansion to read the filibuster now. Yes, no filibuster claiming Tennessee like a functional body. That's about only thing nuclear obstructions and can convince moderates like nation 2 nuke burns 21. Because the general convention is kind of which filibuster makes it a part of functional the body will go on to instead of other free limiting even mansion was government during enterprise and body having the presence to get the free election was going to turn the outcome to be however Republicans to push legislation succeeding undermines opposition to the filibuster box 323 rebels to catch another contribution to the filibuster to get the time to see your way to the Democrat seal legislation go down because the mansion is the only one member of the always you haven't seen yes I to be support the issue place for it. We haven't been for all concealed plans explicitly popular from infrastructure for the Republicans, which also proves the massive football from Republicans, which infuriates them even more and magnifies the internal links now group and they're misquoting mansion explicitly call for cooperation and continued obstruction. Will force his hands Sergeant Party admissions of the coalition time is spelling out definitively spelling out the case mansion set of a mansion test mansion up and peace find this Republicans have a problem for the steps being no compromise mansion. Please don't understand Republicans remain test remove this isn't going to happen. Republicans keep failing to remain test without made nothing is strategic cooperation help you. Reconsider operation the filibuster reform. Now the definitely do the app is just from duo. It's kind of like mutually exclusive. Possible to pass the app and use the filibuster block the plan. The MX rejected from and don't allow any new explanations. Now process that theory, process counterclaims, the counterclaim just the desire to do enacting CGR non-topical cornet ground and educational test the resolution and predictable. They only need to take commitments bad to win if they can't. They deserve to lose. Netflix outweighs insanely outbuys literature and unlimited absolute counterplans that could put them a positive result in that action. Somebody plan destroys all of them because following can always happen. Heat of ground because sometimes it's with indefensible hard debate is good term strategic thinking and makes it fun. Negation theory when the counterplan is more competitive than it's worth considering any of their standard result in incomplete policy analysis. Competition debates are good because the more strategic thinking and understanding of cost-benefit analysis is arbitrary. This was cross-sex. Aerodynamic argument hard out to answer sets price for ad hoc unpredictable rules that screw the negative. Only but out this counterplan is literally impossible to answer with any no regression. Now if you want to answer every counterplan is the only unique negative ground on the topic. Now this is sort of purpose net benefit. Even if the score was unlikely, let's say filibuster. Two factors matter. One, the fight and issue of the campaign forced Democrats to hand the GOP as racist and obstructionist. Second, she has continued GOP as candidates. Are this predictive? I won't read the cards on this, but they say they're sort of firm to the second place. No, because then it literally just passes with Republican votes on both sides, which decks the actual controversy. Quote unquote steals the app. I just did that above. That's just a theory debate on which I did above. They sort of lacks political link to politics. Yeah, politics is a benefit. I wasn't gonna kick it. Yeah, I wasn't gonna kick it the winner. Manchin doesn't tell immigration. He does supports immigration reform. Senator for one. Manchin signaling support for technical Democratic immigration reform for step forward. They consider by the Senate. Now the impact scientific leadership being cause of forensic extinction. The background of hard and soft power deterrence, challenge and caps escalation, conflict and deterrence fails. First nuclear conflict, cyber attacks, CBW use first COVID threats like climate change, migration, and biology loss outweighs new core. We love 19. Actually, I won't read that card because they've already made the scientific immigration emerging infrastructure for us. Obviously, means we have a larger internal link to it. I'll definitely case defense ID down below. They can see the internal link, which means only a question of whether we have a larger internal link than they do. Now the conditionality is good. A is correctly after 600 research career best response to the education combat code means it creates more research innovation. B is technological flexibility. Box and test from the left and right be better advocates. Force the uptake of no ground supposed and the ideological spectrum, which is valuable. C is neglect topic is bi-directional course that check. E is RNA trends. E respies by plans at 2-hour reframing. Condo is to offset. D is no impact. Turn on collapsing and firm check. Other rings cause time to worse. E is no voting theory. Custom credit reasonability non-resolutional theory. The limit arbitrariness. One dispo doesn't solve. Still causes 2 weeks after to turn the block trap, but it causes process campaign returns. Any research goes to patents to set. At the top, yes, there's a link. 3D printing solves massive organ shortages. Back to 17 only fusion for your organ orders will be available. How 3D printing with organs when pressure reader organs doesn't need to replace. They're also trying to build entire organ fiber to build structures. Look like human organ transplant them in animals. Organ shortages cause xenotransplantation extinction. B song 15 use of xenografting phone animal going to reducing better version the one xenografting time by to the whole world wiped out. Xenos believed to be such a human organ needs a current shortage risk includes genosis if it plays the general public risk not easy past you. Xenotransplantation lead to replace some of the infection change lead to plague not built link debate all when a criminal copyright penalties break innovation late 12 we want a strong possible deterrence pre 2010 enforcement regime civil lawsuit for the criminal chief legitimate service pass for criminalization to cost of liability get on for a strong intent fall Latin criminal penalties has become essentially reverse depriving innovation without a criminal prosecution to the rest of the police progress side is a final criminal prosecution threatening innovation Congress should provide copyright not only direct copyright infringement non operations that use for infringement control and criminal sanction 3D printing is poised transforming manufacturing but lawsuits sink it longs 23 may look different from the four novel takes an overshadowed full potential takes almost and really takes that not going to return after compete with the chance of the emerges the practical application make headlines the case for additive manufacturing get stronger no patents defense economics 15 US patents patents fight providing extra protection to change lead to another more private research or increasing yields, strong patent systems use more innovation system ecology of patent defense holders remain block innovation patents use blocking common advantage cost innovation never take place for patent system is incalculable. Yes, there's enable power. In fact, there are evidence to assume that other countries are also getting 3D printing, which means the question of the race to get there. Plus, it doesn't assume additive manufacturing, which we can literally clear our weapons on the way to get there. Now, the 25th kind of plan can see the premises of competition. I'm not going for it. There's no offense there. Any theories, reason to reject the argument on the team. Go to the executive, the advantage kind of plan can see the premises of competition. I'm not going for it. The object is reason to reject the argument of the team. The add-on, they don't get to a terminal impact of environment, but overall defense to warming, which is the only terminal impact they could get to on case. Now, advantage 1. No impact to warning. 2 warrants from Johnny. 1 empirical analysis. No warm period in Earth can be reasonably correlated with society. Last second is adaptations. IPCC overreactions. Ignore economic growth target and human capital preclude. X-rays. No mass extinction. Well set. And most previous climate will indicate CO2 is continued between 5 and 10 degrees Celsius warmer. The modern periods is evidence rapid intervals between global with massive carbon addiction. We see large scale things predicted by some of the most recent models possible working independent very opposites with the most biodiverse intervals all time and local forms by attention. Though I see the polls now warming is inevitable. 3 warrants from a comparison. 1 climate sensitivity. 1 AC was calculated by half. Current emissions like in 5 degree change. Second GHGs, particularly PA, MCBA, fundamental for electricity generation at 7,000 times. 30 oceans absorb massive quality heat, but after mere temperature readings ignored. Gradually doom solvency. Now it definitely turns around. Court ruling climate change questions global coordination necessary to solve climate change. Also charts the international co-op step tribe 10. America's the cross regarding energy, the world shaker problem, substance comprehensive global solution, climate change, disaster, climate policy, court review, Congress, the punch. No judiciary can require reversible attack, change prices, ad hoc mismatch, reflection, legislation, design, market solution, court with him, the market rates regime, or the conduct of the market courts, statute of limitations, political doctrine, imposing judicial power, even the president, crimes of the load, as the economic case, brand application for future charge, rule of law, maintaining respect for the rules, maintaining international lines that need to be turned case before. They can't skip the Huffman evidence. It's just a question of the link debate, but we definitely will indicate, the plan definitely indicates that they do speed up existing litigation because they incentivize more people to come to the courts because they're getting favorable environmental regulations as a result of both advantages. Now, pharma distribution, disease states, pharma impacts 415. Companies are motivated by government people, people not afford to pay the drug, and never materials. Any cheap great men suffering the whole nature biotech development up to the market puts the risk of funding to ensure the impact profitable drugs might be developed. No LAO impact constituency. I can vary 18 liberal characters are deeply rooted like the British, even though Trump had a serious question. The deep is of continuity or design of attack require hegemonic domination. PT is wrong institution have complex relationship or is of complex aggregation various institution deep norms and made reflect negotiated outcomes. No states are not revisions seeking access and authority. After all, liberal international order provides to China and others rise. No sort of ABR impact breakthroughs in protein existing solved now, but there's no reason why the act is necessarily worse. Advantage 2. I don't have to spend much time here. 1, you don't solve truth decay. Your worst have an 18 polarization to provide truth decay. And their evidence can see the polarization is the root cause of truth decay. Obviously, they have greatly increased polarization because it makes that it's literally packing the courts, which we'll concede from their internal link evidence. No, internal link, you don't perfectly identify where the judges should be or their partisan affiliations. Log in 20 as well as from their current as well as from state courts and criminal prosecution, the defense parts of all cause CODIS and injects a bunch of environmental regulations identified in all of your evidence. But conservative backlash it definitely reigns in the agenda. That's Schlinger 21 legal scholars state the court. I guess mark that at legal scholars. Okay, I'm good for cross-ex.
I have one question before Pack starts. This turds warming, the McPherson card, did you read that on the warming and Ev?
I did not read sorry. I did not read McPherson 16.
And you didn't read Tribe 10?
I did read Tribe 10.
Okay, cool.
All right, let's talk about this patent. Just mute yourself, Meacham. The 1NC card is about, quote, bans on 3D printing. The first 2NC card you read about is about, quote, criminalizing copyright infringement. The second card you read about
copyright infringement.
Why is it? What's the link between the AF and criminalizing copyright infringement?
Copyright infringement is criminalized now. Our evidence makes a predictive claim about the reason why that copyright infringement is criminalized is because of patents. All of our evidence is in the context of patent law, saying that people sue to criminalize copyright infringement. Yeah, the 2NC lungs evidence is in the context of patent law, right? Like,
it just says tech hasn't reached its full potential because there's copyright barriers. Do you think there's another card that makes this link claim?
Yeah, no, I think the Lee 12 evidence also is indicating that it's a question of copyright battles. Obviously, copyright is the same thing as patents. Like, I'm confused as to what your argument is here.
The first sentence of this card is, let's step back and ask whether it makes sense to criminalize copyright infringement. Obviously, it's
copyright infringement is criminalized now, so that's uniqueness for us. The plan makes it more likely that patents or copyright violations are able to go through the courts with great rapidity.
You've read 4 cards that criminalizing copyright infringement trades off.
Copyright infringement is criminalized now.
Okay. I guess
the Lee 12 evidence says copyright infringement is criminalized now. People sue under copyright to retain control of their patents, right?
Let's talk about this filibuster counterplan. Do you fiat the plan gets enacted?
No.
Do you think the plan is enacted after the counterplan?
We make a predictive claim that it is likely the plan would be enacted after the counter
What
plan.
card makes that claim?
I mean, the card does not say USFG would create a new criminal court after the filibuster. We've made predictive arguments saying that Democrats are tied to the plan, all 50 of them. One in Singapore is a predictive claim that says the Democrats would likely pass whatever legislation they use to overrule the filibuster. Like, I'm confused with the defensive claim here. Is your argument that Democrats will push for something so hard they will overturn the filibuster in favor of it and then not pass the policy, even though they're all
I'm
on
asking
record?
about solvency, but okay.
Yeah, so I'm saying the solvency argument is that all 50 Democratic senators are on record in. Okay.
Let's talk about this internal net benefit. What cards do you think you've read that says that senators will abolish the filibuster?
Sure. So first of all, your indict was specific to Manchin. We've read a card indicating that Manchin abolishes the filibuster in a world of GOP intransigence. I can find the specific site for you. Second, I read 2 generic cards separate from the 1 and C evidence, which is predictive on this question. Like, a lot of pieces of evidence do say this.
6-4, Niam, take a little bit of prep. 450.
Okay. 1 should be set. Let me know when everyone's good. The order is infrastructure to said, writer to said. I like the arm waving MBA. Okay, is everyone good? Sweet.
Sorry, it's still opening for me. My computer does this sometimes.
Okay, you're good.
Okay, I'm good.
Everyone good? Concede no impact not going forward, but the plan can't write infrastructure because it's not must pass legislation. Once it's only must pass measures have writers attached, which isn't infrastructure, and the plan being popular doesn't imply writers. Once the writers are attached even to popular must pass bills, writer to set competitive outweighs the strong domestic foundation is a global impact cap by renewing international cooperation through a position of strength and enabling military readiness. The only way to ever global hash is through bedrock of economic recovery. 2AC1 barrenness and macro, and it's just about growth being bad generally, which training gives an internal link to, and says the minimum wage collapses economic recovery, which was conceded. 2AC2 arbitrary nonsensical. This isn't at all argument saying writers staff that a clear interpretation, essentially we don't like her to staff, which could be true, but any argument in rules ground apps should have been the hospital plan and they'll help the political health of the plan to keep us policy option at ground and the federal advocacy, which turns education arguments to us as a plan should be done, nothing more. Any other information, let's see. Twist the real world and running accurate knowledge, eliminates politics, same logic about past PC and internal based politics. It's good. Okay, timely real world learning, researching is key generic on a topic with multiple areas like CGR. It's fair, tons of answer apply. They think you need this and no writers like defense. If I turns in, I can't wait. They're affair negative. The TOC topic is huge. They can read writers add-ons, subscribe, and let's check. We have specific recent evidence about this bill makes it predictable in favor of both sides. No offense, they can have a specified asylum legislation in the plan text that would limit or decide to clarify now. However, allows them to escape all negative ground would be a voting issue and key education about policy in RDC. 12 writers legislation about however, with the big budget decision on the horizon, we're once again assisting Tea Party flowing with those writers instead of not resolving until final decision made in November and blowing proper first specificity. Even if there's a general emphasis for writers, minimum wages is the exception to the norm because of bipartisan support in theory. Even if the premise are too controversial pass, it'll be attached to must pass bill by the plan link overwhelms the FDS guarantee, which opens the floodgates and already even unrelated provisions. It's a sure thing. The cost wave amendments in cross history of effects. That's a code one. And contemporary political incentives guarantee structure means the writers for normal means and neither team when a must bill comes up obviously in such interest and we have an earth last items the center check is with the ball with the measures that helps GOP trying to fight back but only nothing. Your budget and austerity hunger off special interest and actually the credit is high and 2AC3 the rep says it says generally appropriations bills not always in Hamilton 12 mentioned first of funding bills or other element appropriations of the highest must pass and minimum wage will be attached to any must pass legislation for evidence over their functional assertion. He's an expert with first-hand knowledge of the criminal situation. It's not just appropriations or arrests can be attached to many types of bills and are essentially drawn to urge legislation like the plan. WASI 7 and writes that change of legislation such as appropriations urgent now and funding bills and other types of bills may also be used in the decision is notable legislation can be a magnet for writers special passing may allow rights to be attached and a plan includes spending so means for regulatory spending doubly for regulatory spending with requirements and the others and such usually and that means it's appropriations, even if they say they're not funding, and if they were funding, it's obviously competitive, but we're net 12 and no coverage bill but authorize the expenditure of funds for a purpose and 2AC4 fiat, and fiat is not always immediate. Actually, crossplay all the stuff that I did on 2AC1, but speeds the link or bills are bad for writers, last 7 and so that's chance of it. Such a certain legislation, emergency bills, certain legislation. I came out of writers, the measure pass the measure may allow writers to be successfully attached in 2AC5, 1 we just thumb, but code 1 says that only must pass bills and get writers because writers will be guaranteed to pass 2 by multi means minimum wage has to write another bill. The link proves the plan verdict. 21 and don't say about Biden legislation and 2AC61 competitors is distinct from economic define broadly. Therefore, he just thought a hedge not economic finance policy to recover insurance nuclear war. 20 eventually no more war 1979 including economic cash before COVID was increasing right down at profit levels everywhere. Like a little partially variable from over 2 president has ever attention and these things from amazing world so increasing great power war be avoided and yes impact all this of it. House 17 the run of order when we follow the US and then the other has to China Russia climate change terrorism season that's like national security foreign policy begins at home work on work the US on the have punishment about the US and more such about about that advice debates and that has will be worth and it goes nuclear land 17 conflicts will increase as slow than rain like those nationals and transit make cooperation harder more for China Russian terrorism climate change slash rather uncertainty about US bring risk and much increase risk and harmful leaders so the policy especially markets will direct attention to nationals and increasing economic pressures weakening from where the government's shoulder from possession economies will confront showing reverse the dimension you have to be well covering from it price without had it we can lower growth with third-party reduction and government's murder climate change and other words automatic collective action and back to advantage truth the case their impact people don't trust the government because of partisanship that was reality no No defense, I want to see pinker governments apply often trusting government historically is always low. Here, administrative state rights that overturn all domestic conservatives like foreign policy and will support aggression abroad, and which tells emerging tech by presidents about other powers and other patents said yes, patents like a handle 11 and then so you paying because more powerful because the I have more records in it. And the Senate says they'll mean top because of potential net 30% full questions that's just before tech becomes the because it has been a high profile and virtual within the 30% hasn't been mass yet. Current 33 rolls that sounds like too good last time on outside, so we'll probably capitalize on 3060 but show me $3,000 like they face up the charges. Anything else?
Wait just a second. Back on advantage 1.
Back on advantage 1. No, be already Jason, that for ignition, increase outside of the solutions that may say or broad spectrum of validation, risk of infection, mental health, that was about antibiotic nightmare. More for antibiotics nightmare.
That's the James 15 card under ADR.
Okay, so are all the cards that you read sent out in some way, or there are cards
Yes,
to
they
send
were
out?
on the 2 and C.
I'm gonna send 2 cards that were
okay.
not in the 2 and C.
Okay,
or were
okay.
not. Yeah. But should be sent now.
Okay. Let me get those before I start prep, if you don't mind. So slow. Okay, good. We have 450. Start. All right, 232. I'm gonna send it out. Sent. There's an ESR header in there. Obviously, ignore that. That was from before. I did not know what the block was going to be. Is everyone good for an order? Advantage 1, advantage 2. Actually, advantage 2, advantage 1. The counter plan, the patents DA, the writer DA. All right, am I not good? Timer. We're not going for truth because they dropped the entire technology impact. This trier to establish emerging tech regulation because AI, bioengineering, etc., all outweigh natural threats on scope, and it's coming inevitably unless we have a stable regulatory structure. So this trier died to let Biden put more people on the court. The state judges argument is irrelevant because Biden gets to pick whoever he puts. So he'll pick only liberal state judges. They say the next argument is just these recuttings. They're irrelevant. All our evidence is the conservatives are more likely to strike down administrative regulations, which destroys the flexibility the administrative state has to respond to technology issues. That's the only argument that's full. No new due to in our response advantage. One, we're not going to go for the all the warming stuff. We're going to see is probably somewhat inevitable, which means it doesn't matter. We're going to see the LIO impact defense. It takes out the plan destroys allies thing. There's no link to this anyway because it's not increased litigation numbers. It increases the effectiveness of litigation anyway. There's no impact to SOP extended, and LIO takes it out. The tribe thing, there's no need this because compliance is low now, and the app is not preemptive court action. But we're going to go for the ABR thing. They continue to cause extinction because antibiotic-resistant drugs are evade all treatments and spread globally like the coronavirus, but they're much more deadly. Gene editing is the recent innovation solves because we can take the antibiotic-resistant genes out and ensure our antibiotics work for years to come. The filibuster counterplan at the top. I'll extend the permutation. I'm going to bring that guarantee permutation to the top because they totally misunderstood. The answer is if it were perm, do both. It is not. It's totally different. It includes the counterplans process of having the filibuster destroy, having the GOP intransigence, but then has the app implemented as a result of that process, which solves net benefit, but the plan is the guaranteed outcome. That's the point of the counterplan is to cause the plan's enactment. It's legitimate to permit changes to the process of enacting it. In crossings, they said that makes the plan happen in its exact form. The net benefits are germane comparison to app ground. These counterplans steal the entire app and eviscerate all solvency deficits. Every debate infinitely regresses to a process counterplan with an artificial net benefit not related to the app or the topic that outweighs his policy efficacy and research skills are maximized when questions are relevant and predictable to the plan's mandates. They didn't all the permutation both stuff doesn't matter because it's not mutually exclusive because it guarantees the plan at the end of the result. I'll answer whatever they might crossify here. They say arbitrariness. No, the bright line is whether the counterplan fee has a process that makes the plan's passage likely and says that enactment is good without actually contesting the manage the plan or bad. Solves a butterfly effect because we only exclude counterplans that might result in the plan, like states because follow-on does not guarantee the plan, but they've said that it's basically a process that's impossible anyway. There's no impact to arbitrariness. We exclude process counterplans. If it's a little bit arbitrary, who cares? They say links to net benefit does not link as a counterplan's process shields link because it happens after. If they crossify anything from the theory stuff, we get new 200 answers. And solvency deficits. Manchin will not do it. He said it because op-ed proves both the plan is never enacted and the filibuster is not new. Their answer to his op-ed proves that there's really high threshold. He says that only if the GOP is super intransigent, the plan's not key to that because they're going to be intransigent on things like stimulus, which disproves it, and cinema. Colin Forsyth, cinema, social democratic defender, filibuster, lawmaker bill. He said they would block the party from limiting the zero requirement. It only takes one no to sing it, so either of those people will mean the filibuster is not going to get nuked. The plan's not big enough to make Manchin so pissed off that he's going to overcome everything he said before. Patents. The xenotransplantation thing only impacts disease. We saw back for via innovation. They dropped that internal link. We'll obviously figure out how to use animal genes without putting them in our bodies and causing animal disease. We're not that dumb. Oops, you dropped Navy impact even as 2 cars. Dominus is Neville prices all new tech and says the Navy is accelerating next-gen capabilities. And even so, they dropped naval powers irrelevant to stability because ships do not deter anyone and lack of patrol is equally stable. The sea does not need protection. Fact-wise, 18 few states to build. Navy's don't feel to trace and parallel free flow is critical. No state with benefit in areas of quantization. Powers of interest, unpaid goods. Chinese worry about molecular development. All engine reports chances to change no seal from use would be suicide for we can be confident they will not step in opposition on interest statement no longer. Need protection has no need zero patrol. Crime-free neighborhood. The link debate. All their link cards say they read say patents criminalize it now. They haven't read a link that the app makes patent claims and chilling effects less. There's the patent law exists. We don't repeal or cause copyright law change. We just ensure that patents go through rapidly. We just not change the perception. Link turn. Ibucur cites the 10,000 comprehensive studies. Patents are profit motive. The only way to prevent innovation from dying at the point of research by preventing incentive to market and diffusing your innovation. Their lead card from a staff writer who says civil suits are good, which is the plan that cap the copyright destroys 3D printing, says that there haven't been infringements before. Past is prologue. There's not going to be infringements now. Yes, others have said, writer. There's no competitiveness impact. Relative power shifts are slow and we always retain primacy. There's no reason this is different. They answered this wrong because they said we need competitiveness, but this was a resiliency argument about every time competitiveness has been in question. We've always come back. There's no reason this is different, which is not answered at all. The U.S. solves this directly to a government country may be able to steal these systems from the main lack of absorber capacity. There's to integrate them in the functioning vehicles compared to developing countries in China. The U.S. prime for technological absorption, property rights, social networks, capital markets, flex labor, also MNCs, not only maybe also absorb nation credit. Elsewhere, the United States is like a sponge. By the card, like a sponge. Link debate. They can see the delay argument on infrastructure. We can see the fiat is not immediate, which further justifies this argument and the permutation. No link. Pelosi brings the plan to the floor after months of deliberation in an isolated commission. That means the minimum wage thing will pass on a different writer before the commission announces the plan. That's golden. That's over 180 days away. Steve, 21 commission appraised perform proposals, including especially the court of employees 20 days after meeting. Obviously, if minimum wage is such a big thing, they'll put it on any other bill before they do this. Their other must pass. They have to pass a budget for the year, obviously.
The card, sorry, Austin, which card were you asking about?
Meacham, what was that last card you read on writer?
I read the Beckley card. I accidentally put a card text without the card that the 2AC read. The Beckley card I marked at a sponge.
Okay.
Like innovation inevitable.
I'm signing that card from the writer.
Okay, we'll start prepping to get that.
It's sent.
Okay, 4:42. Starting now. Writer, filibuster, patents. Let's do court power, then court clog, then court power. That's advantage 1, advantage 2. Yeah. Is everybody good? Shouldn't be any new cards. Cool. Kids that should have won in our impact defense means it's GG. Traffic is econ not competitive. This impact card went totally gets the assistant economic sign and bullets. Rival because can't maintain global presence to turns. If we're in the wake of economic crisis, which triggers nuclear conflicts, their impact is our broad power shifts in our impact because economic kind causes a window of opportunity for revision, states on a permanent shift in the international stock market. Collapses an impact filter for all by power war justifies new turns. These arguments turns if you're on emerging tech, you can invest in and regulate patents or emerging tech impact related facing severe economic downturn forces more internal spending plus their internal link defense are all about so the recognition of use innovation and competitiveness abroad, which isn't true on the context of minimum wage because there are massive downstream economic shocks that prevent innovation, that prevent investment in the economy to prerequisite solving and use the sort of internal links for their impacts. Now the 1 error gets to 2 arguments here and you don't get the 2 error. Anything new. 1 is the impact defense. I did the work on all of that above. Second is the link defense, which I'll do here. 1, delay does not matter. We can ensure the only specific example of what something after the of a bill that would happen in the interim delay, that which is the week which we've answered, it wouldn't be attached to it because it must pass legislation. Plus, they don't have any evidence speculating on what bills would come in even in the next 100 days. Even if they win the next 100 days, is that magnitude. They have no specific bill that would come to the floor that would be must pass legislation, which you find very nearly either as things that are fiated to be so immensely powerful and must happen in the legislature, and then in the legislature, that's the fiat interpretation, which they do zero work on, or it's bills that directly affect budget, that directly affect the way the budget happens, and direct budget sort of operations. All of us know that budget reconciliation, but the yearly budget appropriations never happens until way after the summer and fall, October, November, December, or they get pushed back into February, January, or February, which is enough to in our analysis that you don't get the 2 or any new arguments on this, even if they win. But delay isn't normal legislative process. They can't fiat delay. Fiat is immediate. It's not our interpretation, which means they can't continue to generate offense. It's not a question of normal congressional procedure. That means the bill is immediately introduced. They're evidence saying Pelosi would hold it. This is through bipartisanship, which we conceded, which the plan is immediately passed and bipartisanly voted on. All of their plan popular stuff is an internal magnifier for the likelihood of the writers to decide because the plan is broadly popular. But that's when immigration reform advocates know that they will attach it. And uniqueness when conceded. I'm not going to reinvent the wheel here. Minimum wage will be attached to the writer to anything that can happen. Now, it affects the economy, and in time of COVID-19, we massively need sort of small businesses to succeed. Anything else massively increases employment shocks and causes economic downturn that is deadly to our set of global economic competitiveness. They don't have to do anything else here. They see the uniqueness and the internal link. It's only a question of the magnitude of look. The new 1 year card on it is about competitive, not about econ decline, which means I don't have to answer it. Go to go to the filibuster plan. Can see the parameters of competition. I'm not going for it. No offense in this flow, but I will concede both Mansion and Cinema. Don't go for the filibuster now, and I'll extend the sort of terminal and internal link turns protect competitiveness on the case, which I'll do down below. On the patents side, concede that no link. I'm not going for it, but the economist evidence is terminal defensive. If they try to go for this as a straight turn, the economist evidence is a direct answer to their only card. To concede empirics since the 1970s proves that patents literally don't provide any improvements in innovation and don't actually cause us to be able to get better at technology in any scenario, which means they also can't solve. Plus, I'll concede no terminal impact to naval power, which means they can't go for it. The link turn as offense, but they also don't solve the disease stuff because transportation is obviously unique from antibiotic resistance. They're 2 different words. Good advantage 1. 1, no solvency for antibiotic resistance. The economist evidence is terminal defense. The idea that we can innovate through patent. The economist evidence uses regulations and empirics since 1970 indicate that patents have never fundamentally encouraged innovation, which means that the sort of patents that going through the courts will not solve any of the technological innovation they need. Concession of this card is game over for solvency on biomedical innovation on the first advantage because their internal link solvency relies upon a strong patent system leading to innovation, which is empirically disproven by the economist evidence is better than the ball evidence, which is only in the context of course, sort of speeding up innovation. Now, there's also an extend the impact defense test, James. There's no protein-based antibiotics definitely solved now. And plus, their evidence releases in the same year, which means they don't include some sort of new technological innovation, which definitely solves. Now, an advantage to administrative states overturned are all domestic, which means the conservatives like foreign policy will support aggression abroad, which solves emerging techniques in the context of all their powers. Look, they have to provide specific examples of what administrative regulations are key to regulate emerging tech, which they don't have in any way to see evidence or evidence that it says or evidence that the conservatives want to overturn specifically regulations from the administrative state that allow us to combat emerging powers like China and Russia and their artificial intelligence regulation, plus from the filibuster kind of plan. Both the state mansion and cinema weren't in the filibuster now, but and that they won't over, and that means that there will be no immigration legislation in the status quo. That this total evidence as immigration reform is a prerequisite to innovation, definitely always their internal link, because it actually is comparative and sort of indicates that immigration is the root cause of any sort of innovation or competitiveness. It's the U.S. was bringing the cutting edge of tech by immigration. Plus, we're the only ones that change the sort of structural factors of how companies are able to innovate in the status quo. The economist evidence is a question of corporations, not regulations, which means if we win that corporations are able to become more innovative in the context of a lack of filibusters, terminal defense, the idea that they can solve the sort of terminal impact to economic competitiveness.
232.
Yeah,
Order is court power, court clog, rider. Is anyone not ready? Cool. Massive risk of case outweighs the mitigate discount. It's try or die. They've conceded that emerging tech like AI, bioweapons, and geoengineering are coming now that they lack regulation. They cause extinction. You know that voting negative could mean to humanity to certain death from those impacts because they are not contested at the terminal impact level. Only the have gives you a chance to establish more regulation on emerging tech, which means it's the only way out of our existential predicament. Voting negative the condemnation of the entire species, even if the risk of death is a low risk. It's the only way out because they have no impact defense. I will explicitly concede the argument that the 2NR makes on the case page that, quote, lack of immigration reform destroys the ability of the U.S. to compete. The 2NR literally said the word competitiveness would, and says that it would not exist if the immigration did not pass. If immigration is dead on arrival, the U.S. economy and competitiveness are terminally tanked. This is a massive screw up in the 2NR. I know this is new, but it was new in the 2NR, so I get answers to it. They can't go for a competitiveness impact and then make an argument on the case debate to try to spin as defense when they explicitly say it prevents the ability for the U.S. to compete. The argument about conservatives is our uniqueness claim. Yes, courts are reluctant to have a high bar on the technology now because they are mostly conservative, but the AFA creates a new court, which means that it would create vacancies in lower courts because you'd have to transfer judges, which would allow Biden to appoint liberal judges that are less have a lower bar on technological innovation. They say what tech? Yes, tech I explained above. It's AI, geoengineering, and the nanotech and bioweapons. Immigration stuff was answered below. The other advantage, I'm not going for it. Concede the ABR defense. The tech is totally distinct from ABR because it's about AI and stuff. It's about regulation, not like disease stuff. The first argument I'm going for is the impact even stuff. The 2NR didn't really extend any warrants, just said we read some cards, so you should have a very high bar from opposed not just reading the cards for them when they have not explained it. Any risk of impact defense is an auto app ballot because you know that emerging tech is going to kill everyone, so any risk that competitiveness doesn't mean you can vote app. Empirics overwhelmingly prove U.S. resilience and massive leading competitiveness. The Wolfer evidence says that we faced 4 separate crises, and at no point did the U.S. lose its stabilizing presence globally. Adversaries did not react, and nationalism did not surge. We did not go to war. In fact, there was more peace in those periods than even than when the competitiveness was high. That's because the relative power shifts operate at a glacial pace. It's way too slow. There's no reason that a short-term dip from a minimum wage would destroy the entire every foundation of the U.S. Competitiveness and hegemony that their evidence is talking about, especially when the only internal link card that they've read about this is literally about infrastructure. They have not read a card in this debate that says minimum wage is key to economic competitiveness, which it should be the frame for how you evaluate all this, the impact defense, because they'd have to they have to solve all these facets that their evidence talks about. The econ impact in the 1NR is not distinct from competitiveness. Eleanor described it as a, quote, a power vacuum that emboldens revisionist powers. Our entire argument is that when the U.S. loses relative economic strength, there is no shift in the relative balance of power whatsoever. There's no risk of revisionist emboldenment because the U.S. is so far ahead and we have so much more military, so much more power than anyone else. Turning inwards has no impact. Empirically, has happened in the 40s, the 60s, the 70s, and the 90s. You can cross-apply the naval power inevitable evidence that they've conceded explicitly on the defense that further proves that there's other causes besides minimum wage. That proves that the U.S. military will inevitably maintain a peace, and even if there's a decrease in economic prosperity, the 1AR Beckley evidence was not really answered. It says that U.S. maintains tons of advantage to make its primacy and domestic strength inevitable. It's a uniquely good position to absorb innovation elsewhere, which means that even if another country leapfrogs the U.S. and is a little bit more competitive than the U.S., is closed quickly and destabilizing power vacuums do not occur because we'll just overcome it. If you do not. Oh yeah, Turner's case, they didn't really make it about regulations. They just said it solves ABR. That's completely external. It's not a question of tech investment and innovation. It's a question of regulation. Our evidence is about dual use statutes. The tech already exists. It's just a question of whether or not it's regulated. If you do not think the impact defense is enough, the link defense is another reason you can vote F. We read a piece of 2AC evidence that they explicitly conceded in the block that says that the plan would not be passed, or Goldman evidence would not be passed until after the commission recommended. We've read a piece of Goldliner evidence that quotes Pelosi saying that she has no plans to bring a court expansion bill to the floor of the House to have a vote on if the commission does not expressly recommend it to Congress, which means that normal means is the plan is goes through that commission. They deliberate for 180 days as per the 1AC Stipe evidence. Then then the plan comes out. That's a way to that's enough time for the bill to either pass or for minimum wage to either pass or be once the evidence, the uniqueness of the evidence that they read says that minimum wage would need to pass by the end of the year. The commission hasn't even been established yet, so it would be a while before even the 180 days start, which means it's a way too long. They said that the bill would be immediate. You cannot explicitly say that the bill would delay. You cannot explicitly say that the app it doesn't have to be immediate in the block and then say it in the 2NR. That's just not how debate works.
Good debate.
Good debate. We'll get a card doc together.
F card doc should be sent.
Ned card doc should be sent.
Okay, I'm good. Is everybody good? Okay, cool. I thought this was an extremely close debate. I enjoyed watching it a bunch. Thought everyone was awesome, super high speaks, but I ended up voting affirmative. After the 2R, I legitimately thought I was going to vote negative. I thought the 2R made strategic decisions and had persuasive distinctions, but after I read some of the evidence on the disad and looked at the app impact versus defense, I think the neg is behind in a few places. Short version, super big tech impact, pretty high risk of the disad, but the app impact slightly outweighs. I think the thing that saves the neg in this debate is just shifting priorities on the advantage. The 2R is spending way too much time answering like innovation, disease, patent arguments, and has like 5-second answer to the regulation emerging tech argument that the 2AR and the 1AR consistently have extended. I think the fact that the 1AR uses the tech impact as a filter for everything and says like, quote, outweighs on scope should kind of be a signal to you and for the 2R that this is the impact that they want to go for. This is the impact that they think they're winning. I start with the disad. I think the impact is definitely what gives me the most pause and requires me to read through the evidence, because after the 2R, I'm like, yeah, the 1R didn't really have an explicit answer to this econ stuff. They treated it more as like a competitiveness hedge argument, so they don't really have defense. But the problem is the way you're explaining the econ impact, it just feeds into all of their defense. The top of the 2R says like, quote, economic decline emboldens adversaries, triggers nuclear conflict, creates a window of opportunity for revisionist powers. And this is all the, like also the argument that all of your impact evidence is making. Like the Baird card says economic prosperity is the bedrock of international standing, security, etc. And then the 1R tech evidence is about like international cooperation, liberalism, and external adversaries. And all of this is to say, I think the app is reading evidence that directly answers this impact and is applied in a meaningful way in persuasive manner in the 2AR. I don't think this means game over for the negative, but I do think that this means the 2R can't be dismissive of it. And you have to treat it as a regular argument with an answer, because you're just like, it doesn't matter, it's not our impact, I've kind of distinguished the two or whatever, but instead you just like answer the resiliency warrants and all of their evidence, like indict it, and then I could definitely see myself voting negative. The link stuff, one, didn't matter because impact defense stuff above, but two, for what it's worth, I was leaning neg on this aspect of the debate. I wanted like the 1AR to start, like the top of the writer just said, with the plan is not must pass, it should pass, which means it doesn't get tied to like minimum wage or whatever, just because I think it's a true argument. I think the Hamilton evidence that you read definitely makes that argument, but instead it's like the last thing the 1AR says, and it's like a 5-second blip, not really a complete argument. So I'm sympathetic to the 2AR that's like no new 2AR extrapolation. And I think the link defense, like in the 2R plan announced after the disad in 180 days away, was not really persuasive, didn't answer some of the specific link arguments that were made in the 1NR. So I was kind of leaning neg on the link stuff, which is why I thought there was a pretty high risk of the disad. I just think there's really not an answer to this impact defense and resiliency stuff that the 1AR and 2AR are making with like a bunch of ev as well. The turns case stuff, I think that the 2AR characterization is correct. Your argument is just in context of the other stuff. Doesn't make an argument about regulations on technology. I think this would have been very beneficial for both teams to invest more in this level of impact calculus. I like the 2R attempt to, but the 2R just doesn't even try to explain a turns case argument, like a reason why emerging tech turns competitiveness or economic decline, which is like, there's definitely an argument to be made there. Like the bottom of your impact evidence says tech is much more difficult to control than nuclear weapons and stuff. So I think you should use that to your advantage. But in this debate, it didn't really help out the neg either, because it was just about the wrong stuff, the wrong advantage, not what the 2R went for. So then I look at the app, I think it's try or die for emerging tech. The app, as I said, has consistently explained this advantage. Emerging tech like AI, geoengineering are inevitable, and I think their evidence is quite good. The courts are reluctant now because they're mostly conservative, but the plan enables those direct regulations to control negative consequences of that tech. The problem is the 2R spends so much time extending this like economist evidence, which I think is good. And I don't think the 1R has like great answers to and arguments about innovation, but just like the app doesn't have to win this argument. The only card argument in the 2R is like this Fullenbaum evidence, which I think is okay, but a few things that are important for what, like how I evaluate this evidence. One, there's just not enough 2R explanation, or more specifically application to the advantage in a way that mitigates the risk of solvency. Because I do think there's a line of explanation as to what the evidence says, but there's not really application to the advantage, or how it like kind of takes away some of that try or die framing that the 2R goes for. And then two, the evidence just isn't amazing. It's just like systems are complex with so many hurdles and leads to massive burdens on businesses. I don't really know why that matters. I think it's trying to make a time frame argument, but that's not how it's kind of impacted out in the 2R. That was kind of the crux of my decision. There were like other parts of the debate, but it didn't really matter for my decision. If you have any questions about other things or things about my decision, I'd love to answer.
Yeah, I just had one question. The immigration cross application, did that suffer from the same problem as the Fullenbaum stuff where it just needed to be applied to the internal links? Did you buy the sort of argument they were making that it also applies to competitiveness, or did you think it was just about tech?
Honestly, I didn't really think that argument ended up helping either team. So the 2NR says like immigration outweighs, and I think the way that you were trying to apply it or whatever was definitely in the context of like innovation stuff, which didn't matter. And so I didn't really think it helped you mitigate any of that advantage. I don't really know how you could spin that card in a way that helps versus the emerging tech stuff, but I also think that it didn't really help the AF just because it's just like the evidence wasn't great. It wasn't like explained really. They were just like, here's this double turn. We'll concede lack of immigration reform destroys US competitiveness. Like, I don't know. I just didn't really find it persuasive on either side.
Cool. Good luck, y'all. Thanks, Brandon, for judging.
Yep,
Thank you.
good luck.
Good luck.
Thanks. Good luck, y'all.
Good luck.
Good debate.
Bet.